Everyone, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome back, or welcome to the first time for welcome for the first time to our Friday webinar series hosted by the Prevention, Education, and Outreach Department of Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County. My name is Chris McBride. I am the manager of that very long department name that I just mentioned. And we are incredibly honored today to have Michelle Burke and Gloria Nichols are brand new. I say brand new, but it's actually been a few months now,
It,
hasn't it, Michelle?
it has been. It's been since November last
No,
year.
since November of last year. Well, COVID made everything seem absolutely brand new.
Yeah.
But new in my estimation are elder abuse advocates, and they've been doing some amazing work in Snohomish County already, and will continue to do so moving forward through the year, especially as things are starting to open up and people get more access to resources. Super excited to have them here. They have a presentation. Before we get into the presentation itself, just a few words about the way our presentations work. If you'd like to ask any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the chat. Michelle and Gloria have asked that we address questions at the end of the presentation, but make no mistake, I am paying very close attention to them. You won't get missed. Also, we're going to be talking about some tough topics at times. If you need to take a break, please feel free to step away, put us on mute, let us know. You definitely have the right to do that. And we appreciate you making sure that you take care of yourself during this time as well. So with no further ado, Michelle, I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Wonderful.
And I will turn the floor over to you.
All
Give me
right.
a second here to get the slideshow started the way it should be. All right.
And let's go to the next slide, please. Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Burke, like Chris mentioned. I am one of the elder abuse advocates with Domestic Violence Services. And this program, like we mentioned, launched late last year in collaboration with Homage Senior Services. And it is the first of its kind in the state where elder abuse advocates are embedded within a domestic violence services agency. Next slide, please. June 15th is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and we are acknowledging this day in a number of ways. One is through this webinar. Today we talk about domestic violence, the types of elder abuse, the signs, what we as advocates do to serve elder survivors experiencing intimate partner violence. Lastly, and importantly, we'll cover suggestions and how we as a community can help prevent elder abuse and its devastating effects. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, or Weaad, was launched 15 years ago by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations. The purpose of Weaad is to provide an opportunity for communities everywhere to promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older persons by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, demographic processes affecting elder abuse and neglect. This day serves as a platform for the entire world to voice its opposition to any form of abuse of the older generation. It is a reminder for us all to treat older adults with respect and to uphold our responses in society by creating a safe and welcoming community for people of all age groups and generations. Like I mentioned earlier, we are acknowledging this day with a few different community outreach projects. We have reached out to local elected officials to ask that they acknowledge this day with a proclamation. We have made connections with senior agencies and living centers offering an informative and colorful flyer describing what elder abuse is and where a person can get help. This same flyer is being distributed by Homage and Meals on Wheels, reaching hundreds of elders in our county, not to mention our social media posts and, of course, this webinar. Next slide, please. Before I dive into elder abuse, I wanted to touch on what domestic violence is, offer a definition, and share how power and control is at the center of domestic violence. Domestic violence, also called intimate partner violence, domestic abuse, or relationship abuse, is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. Next slide, please. This power and control wheel serves as a diagram what an abusive partner uses to keep their victims in a relationship. The inside of the wheel is made up of subtle, continual behaviors used over time, while the outer ring represents physical and sexual violence. Abusive actions like those depicted in the outer ring often reinforce the use of the more subtle methods found in the inner ring. Next slide, please. So what is elder abuse? Elder abuse is an intentional act or failure to act that causes or creates a risk of harm to an older adult. Abuse can happen to anyone, no matter the person's age, sex, race, religion, or ethnic or cultural background. Each year, hundreds of thousands of adults over the age of 60 are abused, neglected, or financially exploited. This is called elder abuse. Abuse can happen in many places, including the older person's home, a family member's house, an assisted living facility, or a nursing home. The mistreatment of older adults can be by family members, strangers, healthcare providers, caregivers, or friends. Next slide, please. What causes elder abuse? It can occur when strong social supports are not in place to keep us connected as we age. While anyone is potentially at risk of abuse, some factors can increase one's risk of experiencing abuse, such as social isolation, lack of access of support services or community resources, having physical, mental, or emotional needs, and carrying out daily activities. Next slide, please. There are 5 types of elder abuse that are identified by the National Center on Elder Abuse and the National Institute on Aging. The first one, physical abuse, is the use of force, such as slapping, hitting, shaking, kicking, and beating to threaten or physically injure an older person. Sexual abuse is sexual contact that is forced, tricked, threatened, or otherwise coerced upon an older person, including anyone who is unable to grant consent. Emotional abuse, those are the verbal attacks, threats, rejection, isolation, or belittling acts that could cause mental anguish, pain, or distress of an older person. Financial abuse or exploitation is illegal or improper use of an elder's funds, property, or assets. Lastly, there's neglect and abandonment, which is the failure or refusal to provide for an older person's safety, physical or emotional needs. It is the desertion of an elderly person by an individual who has physical custody of an elder or by a person who has assumed responsibility for providing care to that elder. It is common for an elder to experience more than one type of mistreatment at the same time or over different times. In every case that I have worked with, there was always at least 2 or more forms of abuse that a person was experiencing at the same time. Next slide, please. Elder abuse is hidden, and it thrives in silence and isolation. But there are some signs, some things to look for that may help you recognize if someone is experiencing abuse. It is up to all of us to know the signs of elder abuse so that we can immediately report any suspicions of abuse occurring in the community or long-term care settings. Next slide, please. Do you see injuries such as bruises, sprains, broken bones, or scratches, especially when the explanation they give doesn't fit the injury? Do you see changes in hygiene? Do they appear over or under medicated? Next slide, please. Are there changes in behavior, such as depression, withdrawal, anxiety, or fear? Do you see changes in their regular social activity, such as skipping events with family or friends, or missing scheduled appointments? Next slide, please. Are there changes in their living arrangements, such as previously uninvolved distant relatives or family moving into the home? You may even find a stranger that has taken residence with this elder, and the explanation they give doesn't make sense or feel right. Are there changes in finances, such as cancellation of services, utilities, or stacks of unpaid bills? Are there charges showing up on credit cards that they did not make? Are there lines of credit opened in their names that they did not create? Are things disappearing from the home? Next slide, please. Are there signs of neglect, such as no food in the house, being left alone for long periods, not having their glasses, hearing aids, medications, ambulatory aids, or proper clothing? If something doesn't feel right, please don't shrug it off thinking it's your overactive imagination. Talk about your concerns with them. Start the conversation. Next slide, please. I cannot stress this last point enough. If an older adult says that he or she is being neglected, exploited, or abused, it is important to take them seriously, even if the signs are not visible. Next slide, please. There are unique and often complicated barriers that our seniors face. Elder survivors often have to decide whether to tell someone that they are being hurt or continue being abused by someone they depend upon or care for deeply. Many elder advocate experts and elder abuse agencies across North America see more cases where children are harming parents or grandparents than they do of intimate partner violence. These family members may live with a parent or grandparent or have access to their funds. There's usually some component of financial exploitation, and there's almost always emotional abuse or mistreatment. Many seniors don't report the abuse they face, even if they're able. Some fear retaliation from the abuser, while others view having an abusive caretaker better than having no caretaker at all and being forced to move out of their own home. Some are afraid to report that a loved one is causing abuse because they don't want them to get in trouble with the law. And on top of all of this, there are the feelings of shame and embarrassment that they may experience, and so they keep this part of their lives hidden from others. Older people may have experienced a lifetime of abuse, which has worn them down. Their inner resources, their external resources, and access to resources diminish over time, especially if they don't feel like the system is accessible or there for them. Seniors may not be aware of online resources. The Pew research says that 42% of seniors own a smartphone, but the center also reports that a third of seniors aren't going online, and roughly half of the senior population doesn't have an internet connection at home. That's really concerning when it comes to isolated seniors who are being abused. Older people may suffer from medical conditions that make it difficult for them to recognize and report their abuse. There's cognitive impairment, dementia, and the effects of taking or not taking medications can affect older people in complicated ways. Some literally cannot leave without significant help from the outside. Or the things that they need to cope with their physical issues are large pieces of equipment, cumbersome, difficult to move or pack themselves. Perhaps they live in isolation. Family lives far away and their dear friends are not around anymore. Or maybe there's a lack of support from family members, not believing their stories of abuse or mistreatment. So they keep quiet. They may lack social interactions with others within the community. Maybe it's that they don't have a working vehicle or getting out and about is impossible. Maybe they don't drive anymore. Without a means of transportation, they can't flee a domestic violence situation. They feel stuck and alone. Many have limited financial resources and economic support. So getting help to improve their living environment is not possible, or they're not sure how they can live anywhere else due to the high cost of living in our area. Maybe they were taken advantage of financially, and now their life savings is gone, and they are left to rely solely on their Social Security to get by. Older people may also not be able to return to the workforce if they need to separate themselves from an abuser. Making money for themselves can be difficult, and that presents a lot of challenges. I'd like to add another barrier, and it's COVID-19. In the January 2021 American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry, they found that older persons sheltering in place saw an 84% increase in elder abuse compared to estimates prior to COVID. In other words, studies found that prior to COVID lockdowns, 1 in 10 elders were affected by abuse. Remember, those are just the cases that were reported. During COVID, that number went to 1 in 5. Living in isolation decreased their sense of community, kept them out of their doctor's offices where they were assessed and looked after often, and left them more vulnerable than ever. Next slide, please. What we do within the Elder Abuse Advocacy Program is summed up beautifully by our own Community Advocacy Department Manager at DVS. Erin Clue writes, navigating assistance and systems is challenging when you are in crisis mode and trying to escape intimate partner violence. When we add with that our elder generation and the ever-changing technological world, getting access to services becomes even more complicated and meeting their needs more challenging. Our goal as elder abuse advocates is to assist our elder population who are experiencing intimate partner violence, gain access and get connected to community resources and systems. Next slide, please. As elder abuse advocates, we offer several things. We can assess clients' immediate overall well-being needs related to intimate partner abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We discuss options for services and next steps. We develop safety plans specific to their needs. We connect survivors with appropriate community resources. And if appropriate, we can offer clients for legal advice, housing, counseling, and financial assistance. And coming soon, we will be launching our elder support groups. Most importantly, we respect survivors' boundaries and treat each as an expert in their own journey to immediate and long-term safety. There are a few success stories I wanted to share with you all. Details have been changed, of course, or we have received permission to share quotes from clients. At the end of this first story, a woman shares a personal message. An older woman was involved in an abusive romantic relationship for years, watching it progressively escalate. She turned to us after threats to her life were made by her abuser. We offered safety planning as she was getting assistance in creating her domestic violence protection order. Once the abuser was out of the home, she was able to get the locks changed and eventually received help in moving costs to move to another residence. She attended domestic violence support groups, learning that she wasn't alone, and it helped solidify that she had made the right decision. When I speak with her now, she shares with me, I never could have survived alone if it wasn't for my strong support team of domestic violence services of Snohomish County. They are an amazing group of caring women. When I thought there was no way out of my situation and wanted to just give up altogether, the mental support of these women showed me that there is hope in living a better life without being a victim of abuse. My advocate, Michelle, called me every day to check on me. They were all extremely patient and encouraged me through the whole process of moving forward. I encourage all women who are experiencing a domestic violence situation, please do not keep it a secret. Reach out to your nearest domestic violence services support team. It will save your life and give you an opportunity to move forward at living your best life. We worked with a woman whose husband was abusive for years, but the threats, monitoring her every move, the physical abuse pushed her to make a change. We assisted with getting her protection orders submitted and got her connected to various community resources like Homage for meals and counseling. We gave her a referral to an attorney for divorce assistance. She is now slowly putting the pieces back together again. We worked with a vulnerable adult who fled with nowhere to go after having enough of living within an abusive relationship. They hid on the streets and eventually called us for help. We were able to get them into shelter, help them with legal referrals for creating a parenting plan, and got them connected into housing options, proper medical aids, and accessing food and proper medications once again. There are many cases like these, and it has been an honor to assist each and every one of them. Next slide, please. The other side to our work as elder abuse advocates is our community outreach. We develop, disseminate information about elder and vulnerable adult abuse, neglect, and exploitation in Snohomish County. We conduct outreach and facilitate meetings about elder and vulnerable abuse to clients and their families, to professionals, community groups, senior centers, and other healthcare centers throughout the county. Next slide, please. We coordinate the Snohomish County Vulnerable Adult Task Force, networking with local providers and supporting elders and vulnerable adults experiencing abuse. This task force was launched in the early 2000s, met regularly until COVID hit. The Elder Abuse Advocacy Program was charged with relaunching this task force, and we are up and running again. We have 17 different agencies currently represented at our meetings, and I hope to grow that number monthly. Next slide, please. The objectives of the task force are to bring key community partners from social service agencies, government, public safety, and the private sector to assure a comprehensive response to all forms of abuse and exploitation of seniors and vulnerable adults. To expand community and professional awareness of adult abuse through a targeted outreach and public education campaign. And to develop and maintain a multidisciplinary team of key agency representatives who coordinate solutions to specific, difficult, and/or reoccurring cases of abuse. Next slide, please. Domestic Violence Services remains the only emergency confidential shelter in Snohomish County for victims of intimate partner violence. Each year, Domestic Violence Services addresses the crime of domestic violence by providing victims with many services. We have our 24-hour support line, our emergency shelter, supportive housing virtual support groups, referrals to legal advocacy, a children's program, teen violence prevention and healthy relationship education, community outreach programs, and of course, this elder abuse program, first of its kind in Washington State. Next slide, please. What can you do? How can you advocate for the elder population? What small changes can we make together to help change laws, can help create a better life for those who need our help? What are things that we can all do to prevent elder abuse? What are things that you can do to raise awareness? How can you commemorate Weaad this year and all year long? We have some suggestions. There are many ideas out there, and we encourage you to explore what those are. Next slide, please. First, learn the signs of elder abuse and neglect. Prevent isolation. Call or visit an elderly loved one and ask how he or she is doing. Provide a respite break for a caregiver. Next slide, please. You can send a letter to your local paper, radio, TV station suggesting that they cover World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. You can send a letter to your congressional representatives asking them to fully fund the provisions of the Elder Justice Act. Ask your religious congregation leaders to give a talk about elder abuse at a service or to put a message about how to report suspected elder abuse in the bulletin. Next slide, please. Ask your bank manager to train their tellers on how to detect elder financial abuse. Ask your doctor to ask all older patients about possible family violence in their lives. My doctor asks me many questions when I visit her, and I appreciate her inquisitiveness, her willingness to have that discussion. She says that our talks have helped her help patients. Volunteer to be a friendly visitor to a nursing home resident or to a homebound senior in your neighborhood. Next slide, please. For those of you who like social media, there is this great Weaad project going around, and you can find this slide at the National Center for Elder Abuse. Hashtag Weaad615 is simple and it gets the conversation going. You offer 6 things, 6 elder abuse facts. You offer 1 thing you can do to prevent elder abuse, and then you tag 5 of your friends to do the same. It's that simple. Next slide, please. If you suspect elder abuse, speak up. It is up to all of us to build strong supports for one another. Next slide, please. If you suspect someone is experiencing elder abuse, talk with him or her when the 2 of you are alone. You could say you think something is wrong and that you're worried about them. Offer to take him or her to get help, for instance, to their doctor's office or to the local Adult Protective Services agency. Reporting elder abuse can be intimidating, but it is the right thing to do. It's everyone's responsibility to prevent and address elder abuse. In cases of immediate danger, call 911. In cases of intimate partner elder abuse, call the local Domestic Violence Center of Snohomish County hotline at 425-252-2873. You can also report abuse of a vulnerable adult at Adult Protective Services of Washington State at 877-734-6277. We are here. There is help. Next slide, please. I appreciate you joining us today as we look at the complicated and difficult issues surrounding elder abuse. I really hope that you have learned something new and that you will talk with family and friends about what you have learned. Start the conversation. And remember to respect your elders. Thank you. So we're going to open it up to questions if anybody has any questions. I haven't been looking at the chat box, so I'm not sure if anybody has been asking questions there.
No questions have come through yet, but that was a very thorough presentation. So I'm sure we're all just kind of wrapping our minds around that.
It's a lot of information. Yeah.
Yeah. Point of clarification, just because I was interested in it as well. So when talking about the Elder Justice Act,
Yes.
the Elder Justice Act is looking for reauthorization this year. So it was set into place in 2010 by the federal Congress. And so when reaching out to your representatives, reach out to your US representatives, not state representatives, and tell them that you want it reauthorized. So while I have your ears, one thing that I was kind of shocked with when studying up on elder abuse was that what the statistics, the CDC says that it's more likely to occur with men elders than women elders. Has that held true in your work? Do you think that there's a reason why it wouldn't, and if it hasn't, or honestly, I was a little shocked that that was the case. But
Yeah. So far for us, it has been mostly women. There have been a handful of men that we have worked with, but mostly it is women.
interesting.
Yeah.
Any ideas on why that could potentially be?
Gloria, do you want to jump in?
Hard question.
It is a hard, yeah, that is a hard one. I don't even know how to answer that. Yeah.
Angela, looks like Angela asked a question. She says she's not sure how to unmute to ask a question. Angela, we are in a webinar format. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can either ask it in the chat or in the Q&A portion down there at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A where you can send a question. I can ask that out loud. Unfortunately, with webinars, that's the downside, is that the attendees can't unmute. So it was interesting to me what we had mentioned about men having a higher percentage according to the CDC. What else was shocking about that CDC study to me was 19,000 homicides between 2006 to 2000, I want to say 2017. And it was quite a few that fall under this elder abuse portion. So there's quite a bit of lethality that's involved here too, correct?
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I just have to focus on this for a second, is that the statistics that you quote are old, right? We haven't seen any recent information, and it's really frustrating that it's not getting, it's just, we're not seeing that type of information in a more timely manner. What are the more recent statistics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's also part of the industry.
That is true. Yes.
Yeah. Somebody pointed out it could be that women often have more social support, friends, etc. And that could absolutely make sense. To me, I was a little shocked. I think the reason, and I don't want to keep harping on this subject, I apologize. But the reason it was shocking to me is because women live longer than men. So you would just think statistically with the grand scheme of things. But Lynn's got a really good point there. Maybe maybe it has to do with the support structure that's around this population.
Exactly.
All right. Looks like we did get that Q&A. So a question has been asked. Okay, and it looks like it's a scenario. I'm actually just starting with a new client and his partner, who is female. They're not romantically involved. She has mental health issues, but she is the reason they have not been able to be housed for a few years. She is very verbally loud, and he is disabled and very quiet. I just got them housed yesterday, but not sure what to do in the future if he doesn't think there's a problem.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of information there. Trying to process that. Got the house yesterday, but not sure what to do in the future. I'm not even sure where to start, honestly. Yeah, I see Gloria starting to type an answer.
So regarding the very specifics of this question, of course, Michelle and Gloria are people to talk to, but this also brings up something that we know in DV work. Sometimes the relationship that we can identify from the outside as dangerous, as unhealthy, as toxic, these relationships don't seem that way to the person who is going through the relationship. What we also know is that the best way to support a survivor is to offer support, continuous support, as they make their decisions. Yeah, Angela, that's a really good point. It's hard to type that out because it's a scenario instead of a just a basic question. So definitely understand your pain there, and I am sorry. But in all survivor cases, offering continued support, offering to be a source of information, offering to be somebody that they can come to as a resource, regardless of the decisions that are made, regardless of how you feel about those decisions, is paramount to the safety and the survival rate of individuals in these situations, regardless of the age group. Also, it looks like Gloria might have chatted something. Yep, Gloria said would need a little more information about, well, but I will tell you what, Angela, if you are interested in potentially talking to somebody about the very specific questions, I would definitely not hesitate to reach back out to our support line. 425-252-2873 or 425-25-ABUSE. And they can either get you connected with Michelle and Gloria, who might be able to chat with this, or to a resource that might be able to help out with the very specifics of the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela, for the question.
I will put those numbers in the chat, Angela. Great call. And I'm so sorry, Gloria, that your microphone isn't working.
She shakes her head.
the Zoom problems. Like you just don't know until you know. So, any other questions? We're gonna just go ahead and answer. Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to toss at Michelle and Gloria's typing while we have them here today? Well, thank you so much for that was an amazing presentation, by the way. I just want to say top-notch presentation. Great presentation voice, Michelle. You should do that for a living. I'm really glad to do it for us for a living.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on. I'm excited to watch this program grow. I'm excited to see all the people that we can help, that we can get information out to. And I'm really happy that you both are parts of the DVS team. And I think that you bring a lot to our organization, just as people, but also in the work you do. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
Everyone else, thank you so much for showing up to the presentation. I think that was one of our best. I always think that, but this time I mean it. I'm excited to announce that in 2 weeks, we're going to have Annie Landis back on. She's going to be talking in 2 weeks about working with somebody else, a friend, a family member, a peer who might be in a dangerous situation, in an unhealthy relationship. This is a teen prevention discussion, but a lot, as this conversation shows, a lot of what applies to one group applies to a lot of groups. So we'd love to see you there. I'll be sending out an email early next week with that invitation. We're going to have Michelle and Gloria back on at some point. I can already tell there's going to be a clamoring. The public's going to require it. But keep showing up. We're excited to have you here. And thank you so much, everyone, again.
Thank you for attending. Appreciate it.
Take care. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording.
Oops.